From London, this is the Climate Report. In India, Nepal, and Bangladesh, thousands are dead and millions have been made homeless as excessive monsoon rains ravage the continent. Over half of Bangladesh is reported to be underwater. Authorities are now trying to deliver food aid to more than 12 million people. The World Meteorological Association has stated that global surface temperatures are at their highest level since records began in 1880. And in the UK, the owners of Heathrow Airport, BAA, failed to obtain a High Court injunction against millions of people protesting proposed airport expansion. Welcome to the Climate Report, theclimatereport.com, independent climate change news. I'm Peter Carlin. Nepal, India, and Bangladesh have been hit by excessive monsoon rains that have left thousands of people dead and more than 30 million homeless. As authorities try to airlift food aid to some 12 million people, regional medical facilities are being overrun by people with waterborne diseases. Hundreds of thousands of families have lost their homes and food supplies. Millions are surrounded by water and cut off. As reported by the news agency Reuters, ActionAid India's emergency advisor has said, "The frequency and misery due to flooding is increasing with each passing year." Across the region, commentators have said that it is the heaviest monsoon in living memory. Some of the affected areas have received a year's worth of rain in just a few days. UNICEF's Chief of Health in India, Marzio Babil, has called the rain season unprecedented.
This is something of unprecedented in terms of torrential rains, 20 times heavier than ever. These plains were completely inundated. Even coping mechanisms of communities that usually dealt with floods were completely overwhelmed. The only way you can access this population is by air. There is a problem in providing safe drinking water, which is a priority number one, together with the priority number two that remains food.
The British Airports Authority, or BAA, the operator of Heathrow, has failed in its attempts to get the United Kingdom High Court to issue a sweeping injunction against millions of people, limiting their right to protest against airport expansion in Britain. BAA sought the injunction against a wide range of groups, which covered some 5 million people and included organizations like the National Trust, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, the Campaign for the Protection of Rural England, and Airport Watch, an environmental umbrella group with millions of members. A limited injunction against a handful of individuals and the direct action group Plain Stupid was upheld. Nearly all of the mainstream press outlets headlined their stories as a victory for BAA, although the success of the injunction granted by the High Court was so limited as to be unrecognizable from the one they initially sought. Across the board, BAA failed to secure injunctions against almost all of the numerous groups that it sought injunctions against.
They did succeed in getting an injunction of sorts. I think the Transport for London barrister described it as unrecognisable to the original injunction which they'd sought, which would have affected the freedom of millions of people to take lawful protest. And that's absolutely nothing like what they achieved today.
And what did they get in the end? What did they get?
They got undertakings from Joss Garman, myself and John Stewart to not go anywhere near the airport, and they achieved a civil injunction against the members of Plain Stupid from trespassing in the airport or doing things to disrupt the activities.
BAA's attempts to extend the injuncted area to underground and train lines, as well as motorways leading into Heathrow, have also failed. The area restricted by the injunction and applying to only a handful of activists are limited to the immediate area around Heathrow. Many people are now seeing BAA's efforts for such a wide-ranging injunction as an attempt to stifle debate over climate change and the role of air travel in it.
They were trying to silence debate. They said the focus on the climate camp, but why should they try and injunct 5 million people the biggest injunction I believe ever brought in this country. If it wasn't, it was just about a climate camp being held for 1 week in August. They were trying to silence debate, in my view.
You feel vindicated today?
We do feel vindicated. We went to try, we fought this injunction. They didn't expect we would fight this injunction. They expect that they could silence the opposition. They haven't been able to do so.
Others have seen BAA's tactics to create a sweeping injunction as an own goal, in that they may have raised awareness about an assembly called the Camp for Climate Action, due to convene near Heathrow next week, when the injunction BAA sought was aiming to limit protest. The Camp for Climate Action has not been included in the injunction, but the added publicity was not lost on those who are against airport expansion in Britain.
BAA's lawyers are the best thing ever to happen in terms of climate change and air travel. They've done more to highlight the impacts of air travel on climate change than we could have possibly hoped for. The Camp for Climate Action is going ahead and hasn't been prohibited. And in fact, I'm sure that were BAA's lawyer to go down to the camp, he'd get a hero's welcome because he's done more to highlight the impacts of air travel on climate change than probably anyone else. They've been ordered to pay costs for all of the groups aside from Plain Stupid, and Plain Stupid doesn't have any costs.
BAA, who has repeatedly said that it was never seeking a third runway at Heathrow, now says it is essential. A third runway will sharply increase the annual number of flights from the airport from the current 480,000 a year to roughly 800,000. UK Aviation Minister Gillian Maron has confirmed that those levels could be reached if the current government cap on air travel is removed. After the break, the United States calls for a meeting of top emitting nations. But how does America envision its own future emissions reductions? We'll be right back.
কোথায় আছে রে সেই দিন দরদি চেতন গুরু সঙ্গ লয়ে খবর করু চক্ষু অন্ধ দিলের ধোকা কোথায় আছে রে সেই দিন দরদি দিন